My name is Hector Pictou. My mother met a Francis Pictou from down Bear River way, and he actually left the Bear River area to go live in St. John during the centralization programs of Indian Affairs, turn away from them so that he could not be found. There was a few Micmac people who did that then. He was one of them, and there was some fellows from the Ilver Bar working there. I don't know, maybe they in the 1930s or something like that, much before my time. And they brought him up to Ilver Bar, and he met my mother. She was about 17, and you know the rest of the story. Thank you. I want to tell you sincerely that I've known Del Riley for quite a few years. I consider Del Riley a good friend. I'm not sure exactly when I met him, but I'm probably going to say that he used to drop the puck at some of our good hockey games, and we used to play right down here outside of Millbrook, and you know, don't want to brag too much, but had a pretty good team. I think we won 8 championship tournaments. But I also want to tell you, I'll kind of pick up where Del Riley left off, because I held the title as National Chief of the Atlantic region in 1983, 84, 85, and the last Constitutional Conference took place on the 28th of March, 1987. I want you to know that the formation of Indian organizations, like the Union of Nova Scotia Indians, Union of the Brunswick Indians, I like to believe they were well intended. I like to believe that men who formed these organizations had our best interest in mind and at heart. But now we look back on this, and of course the National Indian Brotherhood was established in February of 1968. The Union of Nova Scotia Indians, whoever the president was at that time, and I thought it was Noel Doucette from Chapel Island, that made him automatically a board of director to the National Indian Brotherhood. The same thing in New Brunswick. The first Union of the Brunswick Indians is incorporated under Section 18 of the New Brunswick Companies Act, and the first president there was a man named Harold Sepier. He was an LSE from St. Mary's, and he simultaneously was a board of director to the National Indian Brotherhood. I don't want to talk about that too much, but just a small introduction. We are Micmac, and we are probably the most powerful and most well-informed, well-placed tribes of Indians in all of North America, if not in the South and North America. Our treaties were never to surrender. I'd like to only mention 3. In October 1775, General George Washington actually wrote a letter to our Ikonfukuit, asking them if they would come to meet with him in the colony of Massachusetts Bay. And in February of 1776, the Continental Congress at Philadelphia, that was the heart of the American government at that time, wrote the same kind of letter to our Ikonfukuit, asking him if they would come to meet with him in the colony of Massachusetts Bay at Boston. In June, the 3rd week of June, they sent a ship. It actually was a sloop, S-L-O-U-P. But I said I was going to talk about 3 treaties. The other one is the Treaty of 1761. That treaty was signed right down here in Le Havre on the 9th of November, 1761. That is the same treaty that Donald Marshall Jr. used in the Supreme Court of Canada. I'm not going to tell you all about it, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. The concluding chapter that I'm going to tell you about is what we need to engrave in our minds. Donald Marshall Jr. is a Micmac. He has a treaty right. Therefore, we will use Section 52.1, and we will acquit him. Section 52.1 on page 72 of their book says, that Canada's Constitution are the supreme laws of Canada. Any law that is inconsistent with this provision of the Constitution is null, void, and to no effect. So that's what they used to acquit Donald Marshall, and his decision was made public on the 17th of September, 1999. The ink was just barely dry, and John Chrétien came to the Indian Act chiefs I'm going to do my best not to mention any names or point any ugly fingers at anybody, but these are things that you need to know. Through the Atlantic Policy Congress, which was then located in Amherst, but I think there's right side of Dartmouth area now. Sheet Harbor maybe, I'm not sure. Anyhow, they put $159 million on the table, and all you had to do, sign an interfishing agreement, and you got your share. The ink, again, was barely dry on that. Junkrat said, I'm going to put $500 million on the table for you. What he does, $659 million now, all he had to do was sign. I don't want to talk about the money. I'm talking about the treaty right that was upheld in their court. And it was undone by the terms that was put on the table by Junkrat. And all the Indian chief had to do, there's 33 of them in the Atlantic region, the guy that was the chief where I'm from, Everett Martin, he signed the paper too, so I guess I'm not going to get myself in too much trouble. But they signed a band council resolution that was required for them to undo a Supreme Court ruling. Some people might dispute me and say, oh, that's not true. The band council resolution at that time was cancelled out by Brian Mulroney. He used the Statutory Instrument Act to cancel it out. That band council resolution wasn't worth the paper it was written on. Yet, I'm going to give myself a big trouble now because I'm going to point the finger at women. You've all been too silent. That's not good for us. You are the matriarchal people. You stand up. We do, really. And sooner is better. You are our mothers. You are our grandmothers. You are our aunties. You are our sisters. We need you. I can tell a story about Del Riley that I don't like to tell it because it might make him look bad. But he sat at a constitutional conference table on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of November 1981. John Chrétien, Roy Romano, R. Roy McMurtry, Eddie Goldenberg. Can you imagine that? A Jewish man who had already forgotten what took place in Europe with the Nazis and the Jews in 1933 to 1945. But here he was doing the same damn thing to us. Finding a way, they were upstairs at an old CPR station in Ottawa at midnight. The kind that you can easily imagine that these guys are standing around telling jokes, maybe using a few choice F words, laughing, eating pizza for lunch at night, conspiring how they're going to take the heart and soul out of our rights. That was on the 4th of November, 1981. These men brought that to the premiers. They had that as their agenda for their breakfast meeting. They brought that into the Constitutional Conference table, and the heart and soul of our rights was voted out of existence in Section 34. That is bad, like a B-A-D bad. We, you, the women, and the men too, we have to remind the world, don't forget, that our uncles, our grandfathers, they joined your Majesty's army in 1940 and fought his Royal War. But to do that, they had to enfranchise themselves under Section 110 of the Indian Act, denounce themselves as Mi'kmaq, as Cree, as Ojibwe, Mohawk, so on. You become a British subject, then you can join His Majesty's Royal Army, then go fight his old World War. As I said previously, my mother's two youngest brothers did that. 17, 18, like that. So now, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I want you to know that these are critical things that we are now facing. We need you more than at any time before. Sometimes I could say I'm brave enough, or maybe crazy enough, or stupid enough. I don't know what great word would be, but I'm here. I know this stuff very well, and I have never been more impressed with a group of Mi'kmaq people that I've met since I came here on the 6th of April 2022. I'm really touched, with these guys. It's some of the women. Not enough women are showing up, but please, come on out. So, they rolled the red carpet out for us would be an understatement. These men said, do you need some money? Do you need some food? Do you need a place to stay? There was no end to goodness and to kindness. And we are here with the information that you need and more, and we're not afraid to give it to you. We're not afraid to say it. We'll tell you what needs to be said, why it needs to be said, and how it should be said. but you pick up on it from thereafter. Because you know, when I look at the Mi'kmaq, we have a specified area as our country. This was drawn by Samuel de Champlain, 1605. I probably would give him, maybe a 9+ out of 10. Pretty accurate. The only difference is our country goes up on the west side of what today is Quebec City, a place called Sillery. In fact, there's even an Indian reserve up there. It's called St. Joseph Sillery. It was given to the Mi'kmaq by the Company of New France. And most of us probably don't know anything about it. We might know a little bit about St. Anne de Beaupré and the places like that, but we know nothing about Sillery. The Mi'kmaq were a power. And you know, through the governments of Canada, this power is being undone. And yet, we're too silent. I'm not advocating violence. Stand up. Join with us. We need you. So I also now want to share with you what it says to the Indian organizations that incorporated. I want you to know where that leaves us. And I want you to know, if we don't wake up soon, we're gone. I want to tell you about a case law in the courts of Canada. His name is Cotition Johnson versus West Virginia Tribal Council Incorporated, 1994. And I want you to keep this in mind, please. Bear it in your mind. Engrave it in your mind. The Native Tribal Council, being neither an Indian nor an Indian band, but rather a corporation, is not exempt from garnishment, that means seizure, pursuant to Section 89 and 90 of the Indian Act. If I were to speak of Chief Robert Glood here, I might get myself in big trouble. I don't intend to do that. I don't want to do that. But 33 Indian Act chiefs did that in the Atlantic region. You, myself included, we're not Indian. We're not. We're in Nova Scotia. It's the Nova Scotia Municipalities Act. These Indian Act chiefs took their symbolic feather and put on a three-piece suit. Union of New Brunswick Indians did the same thing, incorporated under Section 18 of the New Brunswick Companies Act. They, again, took off their symbolic feather, if they had one, or put on a three-piece suit, and they're a board of directors to a corporation. What does that leave you? What does that leave us? Nothing. Nowhere to stand. So, I'm going to go now, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I want to say what I believe is vital to your interest. Again, I don't point any ugly fingers, but I would ask for your kind understanding, and I would like you to expand your tolerance level a little bit, if not a whole lot. Pierre Trudeau and the premiers of Canada started the constitutional process in October of 1978. As I told you previously, that the National Indian Brotherhood was formed in February of 1968. Pierre Trudeau and the provinces said, yeah, National Indian Brotherhood, yeah, the Métis, yeah, the Inuit, you can have a seat at the table in silence. Just sit, look, and listen in silence and nothing more. And that's not a good place to be. So, I don't know a whole lot about the National Indian Brotherhood, but I did meet George Manuel. Good guy. I met Noel Starblanket. He was there from 1976 to 1980. And I don't know who got to start it, or I'm getting myself in a little bit of trouble, or maybe a whole lot of trouble, and I'm not sure, but I kind of thought I saw it written somewhere where Noel Starblanket say, we speak of sovereignty, and we as Mi'kmaq, that's exactly what we got to do, nothing more, nothing less. So I'm getting a little early now to shut up, but anyway, let me just finish. Give me a quick minute, please. I inherited the constitutional process. I want you to know that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II signed the Royal Proclamation on the 17th of April, 1982. Every time we hear about that, we'll say, somebody will probably brainwash you, or all of us, if they could. They always make reference to the Constitution Act of 1982. The treaty rights were not negotiated then. The only thing that happened on that day is Her Majesty authorized a signature, with a signature. And the three people that signed it, one was Jean Chrétien, André Ouellet, and then Prime Minister Trudeau. And then within 1 year after that, I sat at a constitutional conference table, and I'm going to tell you women, please, you are not on the agenda to be included, to be recognized as human beings with rights. The Liberal Party didn't think of you. Noel Doucette didn't think of you. Greg Nicholas, the President of the Union of the Brunswick Indians and Board of Director of National Indian Brother, didn't think of you. We did. I did. So we told Pierre Trudeau at the start of the meeting on a little after 9 o'clock on the 15th of March, 1983. We said, we interrupted him twice in 20 minutes. Mr. Trudeau, you're talking about creating a just society? How just a society can you create when you're not including women, our mothers, grandmothers, aunties, etc.? Oh, oui, yeah? Well, that's exactly how it happened. So there's so much that needs to be said, and we don't get together very much at all. I don't know who to thank the most, but everyone that's sitting here, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's do this again and again and again. And women, please, wake up. We need you. Thank you.